let's say we put this on there as an acting agent for the helmet. Even whenever you have like a high impact on the outside of the brain, bam, you still have that rattling within the skull. Whenever that happens, of course there's not as much of an impact on the inside of the brain, but you can still see the cracks within the your brain. So that's why concussions are very prevalent within sports, even with the headgear and different protective agents that they promote within the sport, because it's not actually protecting the brain from clashing within the skull. Let's see. And moving on to new and innovative ways of diagnosing concussions, the University of Washington in St. Louis actually came up with a way by staining TAU proteins, which are proteins that are supposed to stabilize microtubules within neurons and different parts of the brain, usually found in the brain. So they tested this by, of course, staining these things and then scanning them. So in a non-concussed brain, there was all these blues and light blues, which means that these TAU proteins are perfectly fine, they're healthy, and they're obviously they're prevalent within this non-concussed brain. But whenever they did the same thing in a concussed brain, there was a lack of these healthy TAU proteins, and the red and the greens means that they have degraded. So therefore, that these this lack of stabilization usually leads to those Alzheimer type of symptoms, and as I depicted above, the emotional, cognitive, and sleeping patterns that are out of the norm. CTE is another example of a long-term effect of concussions. If you've ever seen the movie Concussion by where Will Smith is the lead actor, they actually dove deeper into this study, but pretty much it's just a degeneration of the brain, and therefore there's no way of coming back from it. It just gets worse and worse, as usually seen in football players because of their constant collision and head injuries. So my real world application is different Alzheimer medications for concussions. Like, why isn't it, if the same symptoms are being taught or being shown, demonstrated through the brain and physical characteristics of a person with a concussion, why not use the same medication that we prescribe for Alzheimer's for those people with concussions? For example, cholinesterase inhibitors could be used for people that are experiencing that memory loss section of the concussion like symptoms, and even just changing your diet to like superfoods for the behavioral type of changes within a concussion are some just ways that doctors can look into to get more clearer information of how to treat these different types of concussions. So in conclusion, what I learned from my mentor is that medicine is not exact. So there's always ways to improve and to get closer to that precise or general state of understanding. There's a lot of methods of diagnosing people, so being able to have that feedback from patients is very important. Sometimes they can influence their whole form of diagnosing themselves. So if you don't have that relationship with your patients, if you don't try hard to contact those hospitals and try to interpret their forms of data, you're not going to be able to be a good doctor moving forward. In my research, I concluded that athletic and non-athletic concussions are very similar, and that non-athletic concussions are just as prevalent as athletic concussions. There's a sliding scale on diagnosing concussions, so if we could find a way to be more precise, that would be something to look forward to in the future. And there's new innovative technology that's being developed every single day for concussions. And then throughout my course, I learned that time management is key, that communication is your most effective way of getting out of different problems that you're facing. And having an open mind is so essential in being a great doctor or just moving on in the medical field, because there's always a new and different way of diagnosing or helping someone. Are there any questions? So first off, I'd like to thank Dr. Higgs for being so flexible with my schedule, always being so relaxed throughout this process, and letting me have a great time. I'd like to thank my evaluators for your time and energy today. I really appreciate it. Mrs. Click, I'd like to thank her for being understanding and personal throughout this whole experience and being able to help me throughout this process, and my mom and dad for finding me a great mentor and pushing me to follow my passions. And then my works cited, reference slide.